29 stunning girls and one boy were just thrown into a deadly survival game. Chi-Yun woke up with a pounding headache, feeling like his brain had been stirred with a stick. And then, the sound of panicked female voices began to echo through the dark, suffocating space. Then he realized he was surrounded by every single campus belle from his entire class. But this wasn't school. They were standing on a glowing platform suspended in a gray void. Their teacher, Kuyun, was trying to stay calm, but her trembling hands gave her away. All of a sudden, a girl screamed and pointed toward the infinite ceiling above them. What they saw next was a massive, plush white rabbit staring down at them like ants. After a sickeningly loud crunch, the creature began to speak in a sweet, childish voice. Without warning, it welcomed them to Survival Island and began explaining the rules of their new nightmare. First, every glowing square was a tribe that would be sent to a deserted island. And get this, the rabbit made it clear that if you die on the island, you're dead for real. Meanwhile, everyone would awaken a profession, ranging from a legendary warrior to a piece of trash. But Rule 4 was the most terrifying. Tribes with fewer people would face a brutal punishment. Right after that, Chi-Yun realized the malice behind the game. They were expected to kill. Before anyone could react, the rabbit leaned in close to reveal the final, most important rule. On the island, there would be no laws, no police, and absolutely no morality. That's when he felt the scorching, predatory gazes from the other platforms landing on them. With 29 beauties and only one boy, they had become the most delicious prey in the void. In that moment, the rabbit announced that each tribe must now elect a chieftain. The chieftain would have to go to the island alone, first to find a base for everyone else. All of a sudden, a blue voting screen materialized in front of every single person. But the class fell into a dead silence as the girls realized the danger of going first. Before the fear could consume them, Chi-Yun stepped forward and spoke with a firm voice. Even though he was just one boy, he told them all, "Let me be the chieftain." Suddenly, Shu Qinxue pushed her way through the crowd, her face pale with worry. She shouted at him, asking if he had lost his mind for volunteering for such a suicide mission. Chi-Yun just gave her a relaxed smile, trying to ease the suffocating tension. And get this, he actually joked that he wouldn't die before he got a chance with her. Shu Qinxue turned red and dared him to touch her right then and there if he was so bold. In that moment, the heavy atmosphere finally lifted, replaced by a spark of hope. Just then, teacher Kuyun walked over, her eyes filled with a deep sense of guilt. She asked if he was truly sure about this, knowing how dangerous the island would be. But Chi-Yun was resolute, knowing that if he didn't lead, they would all be destroyed. Without hesitation, every single girl in the class cast their vote for him. Before they could even say goodbye, Chi-Yun began to vanish in a flash of blinding light. What he saw next was a system screen announcing he was the first chieftain to teleport. Because of his courage, the system granted him a unique, SSS-level exclusive blessing. Blessing was called Perpetual Vitality, and its effects were absolutely insane. First, it enhanced his attractiveness to the opposite sex and gave him limitless stamina. But even crazier, forming a life connection with his female, tribe members would grant them both rewards. It could even force the girls to awaken rare and unique professions they never would have had. Chi-Yun's mind went blank as he realized the system was basically encouraging him to be a stud. In that moment, he knew he couldn't waste this power if they wanted to survive the island. He had to seize the initiative and secure the best base before the other tribes arrived. And as the world shifted again, Chi-Yun stepped onto the island that would change his life forever. He was dragging his body through the dirt, refusing to give up. But let's go back to where this desperate gamble first started. Xiaojin watched the screen, wondering why he was in such a rush. That idiot. Why did he teleport without waiting for any scouts? Common sense dictated that he should have gathered intelligence first. And get this, everyone in the venue was already laughing at him. A student is just a student. They sneered. He has no brain. Rihook. The jeers were becoming foul, directed right at the girls. Chill rose in their hearts as they realized their fate. Meanwhile, on the deserted island, Chi-Yun was perfectly calm. He stood still, quietly sensing the faint direction of the wind. To the left, he whispered, "There is the sea." Without any hesitation, he suddenly broke into a wild sprint. Back in the hub, the girls were stunned by his speed. "I don't know what he's doing, but we have to trust him." Chi-Yun noticed his physical fitness felt much stronger than usual. Rihook, was this a perk of his SSS grade grace? Suddenly, a broken wooden hut appeared in his vision, but he didn't even give it a second glance. The crowd laughed, thinking he was just being naive. Then, a faint blue line appeared on the horizon. Ryuk. The sound of crashing waves reached his ears at last. Someone realized his plan and cried out in surprise. Looking for a house by the sea, for water and defense. The girls began to shout his name with renewed hope. Ian kept running along the coastline for 30 minutes. Ryuk. Finally, he discovered a small wooden hut on the beach. Quick, sign the contract, the girls pleaded excitedly. But after 10 seconds of observation, he resolutely turned away. It wasn't enough. He needed a better terrain to survive. Ryuk, is this guy a fool? They laughed hysterically. The high morale plummeted back into the depths of despair. I believe in him, Shu Qinxue whispered to her friends. An hour and a half later, his strength was finally fading. Ryuk, did I lose the gamble? He thought, teeth gritted. No, I can't lose, he roared in his mind. You analyzed the situation with cold, clinical logic. There was an 80% chance he would simply collapse. Ryuk. A haze of gloom covered everyone's hearts as time passed. Then he suddenly skidded to a complete halt. Damn it, I found it. He cried out in relief. The crowd from other zones let out cries of hate. Ryuk, sisters, look. Chi Bao found a god-tier location, but 50 meters from the house, his legs finally failed. Move for me. He screamed at his own body. Then, he began to crawl with his bare hands. Ryuk. The girls watched in silence, their eyes welling with heat. He was working so hard for them, and they knew it. With his last bit of strength, he clicked confirm. Suddenly, a brilliant light enveloped the entire class. Ryuk. In the next second, 29 girls appeared in the hut. Shu Qinxue was the first to pounce, hugging him tightly. He forced his eyes open to a truly dazzling sight. You guys aren't wearing any armor, he rasped out. Ryuk. The girls screamed in bashfulness, scrambling to cover up. Now, he was more than eye candy. He was their hero. Without a hint of hesitation, Bayu reached out toward her target. The girls, peeking through their fingers, gasped in absolute disbelief. Just then, the atmosphere in the small hut turned suffocatingly tense. Chi-Yun froze as the genius student's fair hand drew closer. But she wasn't acting on impulse. She was following a cold calculation. She claimed that losing their only adult male would drop their survival rate. Get this, she even calculated the exact percentage of their doom. Chi-Yun didn't know how to respond to such a clinical evaluation. That's when she asked a question that made his heart skip a beat. She wanted to know if there was a way to soften his tensed muscles. Coughing twice, he explained that reaching ascension might solve the problem. Before he could finish his thought, she made a move that stunned everyone. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the silence like a blade. It was Teacher Kuyun, screaming for them to stop immediately. Bayu looked up, her tone carrying a rare hint of actual anger. Teacher tried to explain the concepts of modern social boundaries, but Bayu countered that they were no longer in a modern society. Meanwhile, Chi-Yun's brain had completely short-circuited from the pressure. Without a valid argument, the teacher found herself backed into a corner. Bayu even suggested that Kuyun should take over if she was more experienced. That suggestion made the teacher's face turn a deep shade of crimson. A few minutes later, the girls returned with massive leaves to cover themselves. Shu Qinxue walked up to Chi-Yun with her usual stubborn attitude. She claimed to forgive him, acting like a protective older brother figure. Chi-Yun simply thanked her, finally reaching a state of mental clarity. But Bayu refused the leaf, seeing it only as a hindrance. Once everyone gathered, Chi-Yun laid out the plan for their survival, explained that they needed wood and stone to upgrade their base. Xiaojin immediately voiced the concern on everyone's mind, the lack of tools. All of a sudden, a girl revealed she had already awakened a class. That's when everyone remembered the rabbit's promise of unique classes. The room erupted with the thrill of opening a mysterious blind box. Shu Qinxue shouted that she wanted to be a powerful battle healer, but it was teacher Kuyun who revealed the first game-changing skill. Her class was Supporter, and it came with a massive experience boost. Chi-Yun realized immediately that this was a literal growth accelerator. In his excitement, he grabbed the teacher's hand to confirm the details. The heat from his grip made her face flush with embarrassment once again. She confirmed that she could boost the experience gain of 2 targets by 30%. Chi-Yun, this was nothing short of a broken game mechanic. It meant they could snowball their strength faster than anyone else. Seeing his joy, Kuyun finally felt like she was being useful. Soon, other girls began announcing their classes: chefs, physicians, and farmers. But then, Xiaojin revealed she had awakened as a berserker. Out of nearly 30 people, only 2 special classes had appeared. That's when the girls turned their attention back to their leader. With a steady hand, Qian finally opened his own class panel. In that moment, a surge of power traveled straight up his spine. He had awakened as a space controller, a unique, one-of-a-kind class. His initial skill, Space Imprint, allowed him to teleport instantly. But the real shock was space perception, a sixth sense that felt everything. He could feel the breathing of the girls and the swaying grass outside. When he finally spoke his class name, the girls were left in awe. To these young students, space was synonymous with absolute power. Shu Qinxue quickly dispersed the crowd, wanting Qi Yun to rest. The material collectors headed out into the woods as the sun began to set. Left alone in the hut, Qi Yun focused on recovering his strength. He knew that tomorrow, their world would descend into total chaos. It was still the matter of the clan leader's blessing to address. But what he had to tell them tonight would change everything forever. They were coming for his people, and they weren't even trying to hide it. Qi Yun scrolled through the island's chaotic chat channel during a brief moment of rest. But what he found, there was a savage display of the law of the jungle. Get this, Tribe 14 was openly planning to hunt down his group next. They called them a nest of beauties and promised their members pick of the spoils. Without warning, an icy determination flickered deep within his gaze as he noted their names. Outside, a chorus of suppressed cries proved that the other girls had seen it too. Suddenly, the sky itself flickered as a red rabbit avatar forced its way onto every screen. It was Bunny, the game's overseer, announcing a terrifying new event starting in 3 days. Just like that, the digital rabbit vanished, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Time had suddenly become the most precious commodity they possessed. Nearby, Lin Lu was staring blankly at the chat, her spirit finally beginning to break. She whispered about wanting to go home and missing her mother's cooking. Her sister, Lin Wan, pulled her into a tight, protective embrace. She promised they would be okay, even as her own voice trembled with fear. The glamorous campus idols they once were felt like a distant, fading dream. Meanwhile, Xiaojin was busy mastering her new, lethal class abilities. She felt a surge of strength that was several times greater than before. The single effortless strike, she split a massive boulder clean in 2. In this world where laws had collapsed, strength was the only passport to survival. As the sun finally set, the group gathered around the warmth of a campfire. But the heavy atmosphere was quickly interrupted by Shu Qianxue's dramatic complaints. Chen Xiaolin couldn't help but tease her, making a joke about her reserve granaries. Shu Qianxue's face turned bright red as she tried to silence her friend. The 2 girls began to play and laugh, momentarily lifting the group's spirits. And then, Qi Yin stepped out from the wooden house to join them. Chen Xiaolin immediately snitched, telling Qi Yun that Xiao Xue wanted to eat him. Shu Qianxue was mortified, desperately trying to cover her friend's mouth. Qi Yun sat down, teasingly asking if he would really taste that good. Chen Xiaolin didn't back down, acting like a little hooligan as she sized him up. A burst of genuine laughter finally broke the oppressive tension of the day. But then, Qi Yun took a deep breath, knowing he had to reveal the truth. He asked if anyone knew about the mysterious clan leader's blessing. Girls whispered about the weak perks they had seen in the chat logs. That's when he announced that their tribe's blessing was actually SSS rank. The campfire erupted in a cheer that almost blew the roof off the shelter. But Qi Yun's expression didn't match their excitement, and they soon noticed. Shu Qianxue leaned in, impatient to hear what this incredible power actually did. Steeled himself and summoned the system panel for everyone to read. The words "endless vitality" glowed with a faint, otherworldly light. As they read the description, the air around the campfire seemed to be sucked dry. Blessing promised incredible rewards, but only through a very intimate connection. A suffocating silence fell over the group as the realization sank in. Some girls instinctively pulled away, their eyes filled with a new, guarded alertness. Qi Yin felt like he was being judged on a witness stand for something he didn't choose. Then, Xiaojin stood up, her voice cutting through the awkwardness like a blade. She reminded them that this was a tool given by the system, not Qi Yun's desire. She told them they had the choice to use it or leave it, but they shouldn't blame him. Qi Yun stepped forward, promising with total honesty that he would never force anyone. His words seemed to calm the group, But the underlying problem still remained. Xiaojin knew that someone had to be the first to bridge the gap. She asked if anyone was willing to try performing the first connection right now. The silence that followed was even heavier than before, thick with embarrassment. Shu Qinshu bit her lip, her heart hammering like a drum in the quiet night. She was usually the boldest, but this was a decision that changed everything. Minutes passed, and the weight of the choice seemed to crush the group. Qian didn't push them, simply waiting for them to find their own path. They all knew that survival required sacrifices, but this was more than they expected. And then, just as the silence became unbearable, a steady, calm voice finally broke the quiet and said, "I'm willing." Everyone's jaw dropped the moment Bai calmly announced her decision. And then, Qian looked up in pure disbelief at the source of that voice. But suddenly, the entire camp fell into a stunned, heavy silence. Just then, Bai stood there as if she had only answered a simple question. Meanwhile, Qian tried to intervene, begging her not to force herself. What she said next, however, was purely logical and cold. He explained that this experiment was vital for the tribe's survival rewards. And get this, she even claimed Qian was a perfect subject. Without warning, Qian found himself completely mesmerized by her smile. Right after, Shu Qinshu muttered the word thief under her breath. In that moment, Bai ignored everyone and walked straight toward him. The campfire cast warm, flickering shadows across her analytical face. Before he could react, she stood on her tiptoes and leaned in. All of a sudden, Qian's mind went completely blank. The sound of the waves and the wind simply vanished. And then, Bai pulled away as if finishing a chore. She claimed that research required a kiss before any further intimacy. Even worse, she began citing data on dopamine and endorphins. She even criticized the slow reaction time as a lack of experience. That's when Shu Qinshu's eyes went wide with pure jealousy. Meanwhile, Chun Xiaolin couldn't believe what she was seeing. All of a sudden, the other girls turned away in embarrassment. But Bai wasn't done. She proposed a second verification. Just then, Shu Qinshu screamed for her to wait. Hidden feelings in her heart were finally exploding. Without warning, Bai asked if she wanted to participate too. Right after, Shu Qinshu declared she wanted to be with him too. Then, a wave of shocked gasps rippled through the group. What they saw next was better than any idol drama. Meanwhile, Qian felt her entire worldview crumbling away. In that moment, Qi-yun's internal processor completely burned out. And get this, Bai tried to schedule the experiment for tomorrow. But suddenly, Shu Qinshu demanded that she go first tonight. Before she could argue, Bai asked for a valid reason. That's when Shu Qinshu shouted the words "brother priority." Without warning, the entire group was left speechless by that logic. Then, Bai actually began to consider the argument. Right after, she accepted the nonsense excuse as a social criterion. Meanwhile, Chun Xiaolin was dying of laughter in the background. And then, Shu Qinshu felt a sudden wave of guilt. But suddenly, everyone realized they were actually going through with it. Just then, Shu Qinshu grabbed Qi-yun's hand and led him away. All of a sudden, even Xia Jin felt a surge of respect for him. And as the night grew cold, their real experiment finally began. Shu Qinshu pinned him down with a desperate, trembling determination. Inside the thatched hut, moonlight was the only source of light. It illuminated the silhouettes of the girls lying sprawled across the floor. Despite the silence, not a single person could fall asleep. They hadn't yet adapted to these dark nights without their phones. Suddenly, a girl whispered to her friend with intense curiosity. She wondered why there was still no movement from Qi-yun's side. Her friend retorted stubbornly, even as she turned to watch them. She was ruthlessly exposed for wanting to see the live action. What he didn't know was that this was an immersive live experience. Many of the girls were keeping quiet, eavesdropping in the darkness. They realized that being too quiet would make them suspicious. A few seconds later, the sound of snoring began to ring out. One by one, more snoring sounds filled the 50-square-meter room. Meanwhile, Bai lay quietly, focusing all her hearing on the corner. She was attempting to parse information from the sound waves alone. As the snoring grew frequent, Shu Qinshu finally relaxed her guard. The cool air touched her skin, sending a sudden shiver through her. With a nimble roll, she suddenly pinned Qi-yun beneath her. Their eyes met in the dim light with an electric intensity. She lowered her head, her voice carrying a desperate, trembling determination. Qi-yun could see the deep blush on her cheeks by moonlight. Her breathing became warm and rapid as she leaned closer. But instead of being nervous, Chi Yun decided to tease her. Shu Qinxue shuddered, as if electrocuted when he spoke. She turned her face away, unable to bear his piercing gaze. She confessed that she liked him since she called him brother. That way, she could touch him without anyone gossiping. Chi Yun almost laughed out loud at her adorable reason. He asked her exactly how she planned to take him. Shu Qinxue froze, her mind racing to find a plan. She told him to shut up before biting his shoulder clumsily. Chi Yun hissed as he felt her soft, inexperienced touch. She whispered for him to be gentle, and the night began. Half of the fake snoring stopped as the girls listened intently. An intense battle was underway in that small corner. The next morning, bright sunlight woke Chi Yun from his sleep. Shu Qinxue was still sleeping soundly, wrapped around him like a koala. A satisfied blush and a smug smile remained on her face. Chi Yun chuckled, leaving a soft kiss on her tender lips. Suddenly, a familiar robotic voice echoed in his mind. He had obtained a permanent reward, the lucky big wheel. The system also detected the results of their intense night. Shu Qinxue now had an opportunity to change her job. He could become a top-tier healer or a humanoid Tyrannosaurus. Chi Yun stood up, his gaze sweeping across the sunlit room. The girls were sleeping in disarray, creating a vivid, alluring scene. Suddenly, his eyes landed on the campus belle, Yishi. She looked like a masterpiece in an oil painting. He remembered her telling him that she hated him back at school. Then, Yishi did something that left him completely dumbfounded. She lazily opened her arms and asked him for a hug. Chi Yun petrified, wondering if he was having a hallucination. But as soon as she fully woke up, her expression turned icy. She claimed she was just muddled from sleep and told him to forget it. In truth, she loved him, but was terrified of being rejected. A massive, shimmering wheel suddenly materialized right in front of him. This was the lucky wheel, a permanent reward for his survival. But as the prize tiers appeared, his excitement quickly turned into dread. The odds for a legendary gold prize were a pathetic 1%. Just like my luck in those old gacha games, he muttered bitterly. And then, a fresh, sweet fragrance suddenly drifted into his senses. Without warning, a warm and energetic body leaped onto his back. Two slender arms wrapped tightly around his neck in a familiar embrace. "Hibao, what are you staring at so intensely?" A playful voice chirped. He sighed, reaching back to gently lift the girl off him. Even though she was acting lively, he knew exactly who this was. "Lin Wan, stop pretending to be your younger sister," he said calmly. The girl in front of him puffed her cheeks out in mock anger. "Did you get stupid from sleep? I'm clearly the energetic Lin Lo." Just then, another identical girl walked over with a gentle, tolerant smile. We're twins, and they loved playing these identity-swapping tricks. But Chi Yun possessed a natural radar for telling them apart instantly. He stared at the gentle sister for a long, silent moment. Suddenly, he reached out and playfully pinched her soft, fair cheek. The sister-style smile froze, replaced by a gaze as sharp as ice. "Chi Yun, what do you think you're doing?" She hissed coldly. Instead of backing away, he just chuckled and rubbed her messy hair. "You'll need 10 more years of practice to fool me, Lin Lo." The icy atmosphere vanished as she stomped her feet in frustration. "Was it possible that you never fall for our act?" She groaned. Meanwhile, the real Lin Wan watched them with a mix of curiosity and defeat. Soon, the girl's attention shifted to the massive, glowing wheel. "Is this another blessing from the clan leaders?" Lin Lu asked curiously. She nudged him with her elbow, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "So tell us, how was the battle during the blessing last night?" Several other girls woke up, filling the room with teasing laughter. "It sounded like a real war of attrition from where we were." Chi Yun raised his hands in surrender, trying to hide his embarrassment. "Serious. This one could actually give us something life-saving, food." The mention of a meal hit their empty stomachs like a lightning bolt. "Food? Real food?" Lin Lu shouted, her eyes wide with desperate hunger. She immediately stepped forward, claiming she was the luckiest person alive. "Step aside, everyone. I'm a European emperor who pulls 5 golds at once. If I don't win, my sister and I will sacrifice ourselves for the next blessing." Lin Li's fist slammed onto the roulette button with a thunderous, world-shaking bang. Just moments before, the girls were chanting like their very lives depended on it. And get this, they were all yelling for just one more spin. That's when Chi Yun felt a massive headache coming on from all the chaos. But the elder sister, Lin Wan, was practically in a state of total mental shock. She quickly tried to scold her younger sister for making such wild, double entendre jokes. However, Lin Lu just stared back with an intensity that was absolutely undeniable. It was a gaze filled with confidence, pride, and an unquestionable sense of certainty. And surprisingly, Lin Wan found herself murmuring an agreement like she was possessed. As soon as the words left her mouth, she completely froze in horror. Meanwhile, Lin Lu puffed out her chest, waiting for Chi Yun to finally agree. Chi Yun was caught off guard by the sheer beauty of the twin sisters, but he forcibly suppressed his messy thoughts to focus on the top priority. That's when he coughed twice, pulling everyone back to reality from their fantasies. Without warning, Lin Lu jumped up and gave him a sudden, soft bear hug. She quickly separated and stood before the brilliant Lucky Roulette with a pious look. Then, she began muttering a prayer for the legendary golden reward to manifest. All of a sudden, she pressed the start button with lightning-fast speed. The entire room fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. Then one nervously gripped her clothes, her heart beating like a drum. And then the pointer began to slow down as it passed the purple zone. It was moving toward the hair-thin golden area at a turtle's pace. Everyone's heart was in their throat as they watched that tiny line. The pointer trembled violently, as if it were suffering from Parkinson's disease. Suddenly, it looked like it was going to slide right back into white hell. That's when Lin Lu let out a clear, majestic shout like an empress. Before anyone could react, she slammed her fist down on the center button. The entire roulette wheel vibrated under the force of her European emperor's fist. Miraculously, the pointer stopped dead on the intersection of gold and white. The next moment, a brilliant golden light erupted like the rising sun. It really was a golden legend, lighting up every single face in the room. Lin Lu turned around slowly, looking like a goddess descended to the mortal world. She parted her red lips and spoke a single, majestic word, "Kneel." And get this, everyone, including Chi Yun, instinctively dropped to one knee. It wasn't humiliation, but pure shock at her incredible, godlike luck. She extended her slender right hand and issued another command, "Kiss." Chi Yun didn't hesitate, reaching out to support her delicate, cool hand. He lowered his head and lightly touched his lips to the back of her hand. Suddenly, the solemn atmosphere melted away into Lin Li's smug, familiar smile. The girls erupted into a tsunami of cheers, crowding around their new European emperor. Meanwhile, the actual rewards began to materialize beneath the glowing roulette wheel. They had obtained the Happy Water Tank, a source of infinite drinking water. Xia Jin was the first to react, pressing the silver pipe to release clear, pure water. Girls scrambled to drink, their eyes turning red with relief and happiness. But get this, the red button produced ice-cold, bubbling cola. Jun Xiaolin shouted refreshing, as the sweet carbonation hit her parched throat. And then there was the second reward, a mysterious, glowing fortune compass. This incredible tool could detect danger and even guide them to hidden treasures. Chi Yun's heart beat wildly, knowing their survival pressure had just vanished. But just when they thought it was over, a mechanical voice rang out again. Common Supplies gift pack was being issued alongside the golden one. Chi Yun stared in disbelief. It was a system glitch that gave them both rewards. In his excitement, he grabbed Lin Lu and spun her around in a joyful circle. Lin Lu was caught off guard, water spilling from her hand as she blinked. She joked that if he wanted to conquer her, he'd have to conquer her sister first. Chi Yun just laughed, explaining that they had hit a massive double jackpot. Hearing this, Lin Li's smug expression returned with even more intensity. She stood tall, declaring herself the ultimate European emperor of luck. And with these new rewards, their survival in this world had just changed forever. But what would the fortune compass reveal about the dangers waiting in the dark? Zhang Chong licked his lips, his eyes gleaming with pure greed and cruelty. But back at the main camp, Chi Yun was busy opening a brand new supply crate. Inside, he found 13 packs of rations and 15 sets of simple bikinis. Get this, Chi Yun immediately realized these items weren't random at all. They seemed to correspond perfectly to the tribe's most urgent needs. The 13 rations were for the 13 people currently suffering from intense hunger. The 15 swimsuits were for those who desperately needed better clothing. Even the lighter was exactly what Mo Lan needed to start their fires. Then he spotted a fishing rod and wondered who could possibly want that. All of a sudden, He clapped his hands to draw everyone's attention. He announced that the supplies were here and everyone could choose one item. Seeing the food and clothes, the girls finally began to relax. One by one, they stepped forward to take what they desired most. Faces that were once filled with worry were now glowing with joy. And then, they began to murmur their thanks to Chi Yun and the clan leader. Some even joked that these rewards were thanks to last night's secret battle. Then, Emolan chose a biscuit instead of the lighter she wanted before. That's when only 3 items were left: the rod, the lighter, and 1 ration. Suddenly, Chun Xiaoan staggered over, looking like she was about to collapse. As she reached for the food, her gaze fell upon the fishing rod. In that moment, her hunger was instantly replaced by a surge of pure excitement. She screamed with delight, choosing the rod over the food without hesitation. What he saw next left him speechless. He had found a legendary fishing fanatic. Before she could run off, he reminded her that there was no bait. She whipped her head around as if he had just gravely insulted her. She argued that nature was full of bait if you just knew where to look. She promised the sisters a massive fish feast for dinner that very night. And just like that, the entire tribe erupted into cheers of hope once again. Meanwhile, Shu Qinxue finally began to wake up from her deep sleep. She mumbled incoherently about being too weak to do anything else. Qian felt a bead of sweat on his head as the others started to tease them. Quiet her down, he quickly shoved a biscuit directly into her mouth. As she realized it was food, she actually started crying from pure emotion. But suddenly, Qian told her she had a very important choice to make. Qian quickly brought some water to help her wash down the dry biscuit. Without any hesitation, she declared that she wanted to be a destroyer. In an instant, a scorching power erupted from deep within her body. She felt so strong she thought she could punch an ox to death. But when she tried to stand up, her weak legs betrayed her immediately. She blamed him for her weakness, reminding him of what he did last night. Meanwhile, Zhang Chang was already planning his brutal raid on their camp. He vowed to seize all the girls and make the island's beauty his own. A pale, lifeless limb suddenly emerged from the freshly turned soil, cold and unnatural. And before anyone could process the horror, a piercing scream echoed across the island. But this wasn't a tragedy. It was exactly the opportunity Qi Yun had been looking for. To understand how they found this buried secret, we have to go back 10 minutes. Just moments earlier, Qi Yun had activated the daily fortune-seeking function of his legendary compass. And then, the pointer turned a deep crimson and began to spin without stopping. Instead of pointing the way to treasure, it just kept rotating at a constant, maddening speed. 5 minutes passed, and Qi Yun began to suspect his legendary item was simply broken. Just then, a delicate fragrance filled the air as Baiyu sat down silently beside him. She watched the spinning needle with those calm, ripple-free eyes, already deducing the truth. Without a word, she took the compass from his hand to test her theory. When she tilted it slightly, the pointer's speed changed by an almost imperceptible fraction. Finally, she stood the compass completely upright, and the rotation stopped instantly. The red needle was now pointing squarely and precisely at the ground beneath their feet. Qi Yun felt as if his IQ had been pinned to the ground and rubbed by the compass. But before he could offer a clumsy excuse, Baiyu leaned in and kissed him gently. She claimed she just came to get some dopamine, leaving him completely stunned. Shaking off the distraction, he immediately summoned the rest of the group for a new mission. Xia Jin and several others quickly sprang into action, trusting Qi Yun's bizarre intuition. As they dug, the soil began to give way to something dark and strangely soft. Suddenly, a girl froze mid-motion, her eyes widening in pure, primal terror. Intense visual impact and a foul, rotting scent hit them all at once. Qi Yun's heart sank as he pushed through the crowd to see the horror for himself. There, half buried in the dirt, was a face pulled back in a terrifying, permanent grin. Between its teeth were unmistakable traces of dark, dried blood from its last meal. It looked exactly like a zombie, the same crisis that was supposed to arrive in 3 days. He realized these monsters hadn't descended from the sky. They were buried right under their pillows. Without waiting for the panic to spread, he jumped into the pit to face the dormant threat. And then, ripples of distorted space began to shimmer around his outstretched hand. Out of thin air, he summoned the blade of space, his exclusive class weapon. His eyes turned cold as he aimed for the core of the monster's skull. With a fierce roar, he brought the glowing blade down in a single, decisive flash of light. A dull thud followed, and a system notification confirmed the kill. Not only was the threat gone, but he had just gained 50 precious experience points. Instead of fear, a surging wave of excitement washed over him. These weren't just monsters. They were a pure experience pack waiting to be harvested. Xiaojin watched him from the edge of the pit, her fingers finally loosening their grip on her own knife. She immediately ordered everyone to gather all tools and prepare for a massive excavation. Meanwhile, Qi Yin used his space perception to scan the entire camp for more hidden enemies. He pointed out 3 more locations where the cold, dead spatial fluctuations were strongest. Girls began to dig with a newfound purpose, determined to clear their home of the rot. But as the camp buzzed with activity, Qi Yun sensed something even more disturbing. Deep within the jungle, 2 strange and powerful auras were watching them in silence. He knew that the real battle for survival was only just beginning. They were being hunted like prey, and the predators were closing in fast. Deep in the mosquito-infested woods, 2 men were on a dark mission. The lanky Xiao Air followed behind, his face full of reluctance. Wondered why his boss made them crawl through this miserable nest. But Zhang Lei turned back with a look of reckless ferocity. He told his partner to shut up and keep moving, because once they found a camp, the real reward would begin. He planned to kidnap the women wandering off alone, and Xiao Air's eyes lit up with impatient excitement. Meanwhile, in another clearing, Lin Lu and Mo Lan were foraging. Mo Lan was using her chef skills to find edible mushrooms. But Lin Lu had something else on her mind. She asked if Mo Lan had seen anyone more handsome than Qi Yun. Mo Lan paused, her stunning face showing a faint mockery. She explained how the entertainment industry was built on illusions. In her eyes, real beauty didn't need filters or makeup. Lin Lu giggled, calling Qi Yun a rare natural resource. She almost called him her Qi Bao before quickly correcting herself. But their light-hearted moment was shattered by a sudden rustle. Out of the bushes crawled the shifty-eyed Xiao Air, leered at Mo Lan, recognizing her from the internet. The girls immediately turned to run for their lives. But Zhang Lei appeared, blocking their only path of retreat. Grinned, treating them like prizes to be claimed. Mo Lan's heart sank as she realized they were trapped. The laws of society no longer existed in this jungle. Then, Lin Lu whispered about the wooden stick. It was the emergency tool Qi Yun had given them. Without a second thought, Mo Lan crushed the wood. Miles away, Qi Yun was busy digging up the undead. Suddenly, he felt his space imprint shatter into pieces. Expression changed instantly as he sensed their location. He told his companion that the girls were in grave danger. Then, he closed his eyes and focused on the remaining mark. Back in the woods, Zhang Lei reached out for Mo Lan, but the space beside her twisted and warped without warning. A figure appeared like a phantom out of thin air. It was Qi Yun, his eyes radiating a cold, murderous intent. Zhang Lei's hand froze in midair from pure shock. He couldn't understand how someone could just appear like that. Qi Yun checked on the girls, making sure they were unharmed. Lin Lu cried out in relief, finally finding her pillar of support. Zhang Lei recovered, pulling a jagged bone knife from his waist. He threatened Qi Yun, claiming his tribe would be wiped out. But Qi Yun didn't waste a single breath on words. He lunged forward with speed that defied the human eye. A heavy footprint slammed into the center of Zhang Lei's chest. Xiao Air tried to ambush him with a heavy rock, but Qi Yun caught his wrist with the precision of a pincer. With a swift strike to the jaw, Xiao Air collapsed, and as Zhang Lei fled, Qi Yun left a secret mark on his skin. He stood on the cliff's edge, declaring he would wipe out an entire tribe alone. Xiaojin stared at him, her eyes wide with absolute disbelief and horror. But before this madness began, Qi Yun had to save his friends first. Just moments ago, he had rushed to find Mo Lan and Lin Lu, and as he approached, the cold, sharp aura around him began to fade. Lin Lu couldn't hold back anymore and buried her face in his chest, sobbing. Meanwhile, Mo Lan finally collapsed against a tree, her body trembling with relief. She looked up at him, her professional distance replaced by pure, lingering fear. Right after, Qi Yun pulled her up, his tall figure offering a rare sense of security. On their way back, they were met by Xiaojin and her reinforcements. But Qi Yun was concise, simply stating that the threat was already resolved. That's when a stinging sense of powerlessness began to surge in Xia Jin's heart. She felt like a mere decoration compared to his overwhelming strength and judgment. Soon after, they reached the cliff edge outside their humble wooden shelter. Without warning, Qi Yin revealed his plan to strike the stronghold of Tribe 14. Xia Jin snapped at him, warning that negotiation without strength was just humiliation. But Qi Yin shook his head, his profile looking cold under the dying light. He wasn't going to negotiate. He was going to establish absolute dominance. And to do that, he intended to wipe out every single enemy tonight. Xia Jin's voice distorted as she screamed that this was nothing but suicide. After all, the enemy had 30 people, including rare awakened professionals. Even so, Qi Yun remained calm, having anticipated her shock from the start. He knew that showing any weakness in this world was a death sentence. Before long, he convinced her that a preemptive strike was their only hope. Half an hour later, a pile of defeated zombies lay before the house. Just then, Kuyun activated her special experience boost skill on him. As a faint light entered his body, Qi Yun drew his blade of space. He struck down the creatures one by one, his power growing with every kill. And suddenly, system notifications began flashing rapidly before his amber eyes. He leveled up once, then twice, reaching level 4 in mere moments. Immediately, a wave of warmth surged through his limbs, enhancing his physical limits. What's more, his space perception became sharper, mapping the environment with precision. As he prepared to leave, Baiyu approached him with an analytical gaze. She had calculated his micro-expressions, knowing he was planning something high-risk. In that moment, Qi Yun felt a strange emotion rise in his heart. He promised her he would return safely to continue their promised experiment. All of a sudden, Baiyu stood on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. She didn't want to lose her dopamine source, her eyes dimming with rare concern. Right after, she returned to the campfire, leaving him with cold determination. But then, Xia Jin appeared behind him, clutching a set of knives. She whispered that she wanted to go with him, her pride still stinging. However, Qi Yun insisted she stay to lead the tribe in his absence. Reluctantly, she handed him 5 specially crafted flying knives made of rare iron. These weapons would allow him to utilize his space imprints more effectively. With a final thank you, Qi Yun turned and stepped into the dark jungle. Meanwhile, Chun Xiaolin burst from the woods, carrying a massive catch of fish. She shouted for Qi Yun, boasting about the feast she had brought back. The tired girls gathered around, their fear momentarily forgotten at the sight of food. But as Chun Xiaolin scanned the crowd, her smile began to falter. She asked Xia Jin where their leader had run off to hide. Xia Jin tensed up, calmly lying that he simply had something to do. And as the girls celebrated, Qi Yun vanished into the shadows of the enemy's territory. The declaration of war flashed across every screen on the island. Xia Jin spammed the message until the system finally muted her. But the silence that followed was filled with cruel mockery. Thousands of survivors laughed at the beauty tribe's desperate struggle. And get this, they didn't believe a group of women could fight. She didn't care about their insults because the real hunt was beginning. Meanwhile, Qi Yun was already tracking his prey through the dark. The space imprint he left on the scout was working perfectly. Without knowing it, the scout led him straight to the enemy's heart. Inside, the leader of Tribe 14 was waiting for news. Zhang Lei complained about the eerie boy who had defeated him. He swore the kid could vanish and reappear like a ghost. The other men in the room just laughed at his fear. That's when Zhang Lei insisted it was a rare combat class. Just then, the room fell silent as the leader stood. He reminded them that he also possessed a rare wolf power, and anyone who touched his brother had to pay in blood. The entire tribe roared in agreement, ready for a slaughter. They planned to raid the beauty nest and take everything. He promised to kick the pretty boy's head around like a ball. But little did they know, the hunter was already in position. Qi Yun activated his level 4 space perception to map the camp. Perfect 3-dimensional map of the enemy base filled his mind. He counted 4 sentries guarding the perimeter of the camp. That's when he decided to take them out one by one. First guard was bored, playing with a bone knife. Without warning, Qi Yun threw his first blade with lethal precision. It didn't hit the man, but the branch directly above him. Sentry looked up, but he couldn't see anything in the shadows. In that moment, Qi Yun vanished from his hiding spot. He blinked through space, appearing right behind his target. The swift movement, the sentry was put into a deep sleep. He laid the body down gently, making no sound at all. And then he was gone again before anyone could notice. The second sentry didn't even have time to scream. Another space blink, and another enemy was neutralized instantly. Right after, the third guard fell into the same magical trance. But the fourth sentry was a little more alert than the others. He whispered a question into the darkness, but received no answer. Before he could react, Chi-Yun's blade found its mark. All four sentries were down, and the real slaughter was about to begin. Zhang Chong threw his head back and let out a bone-chilling, inhuman roar. His bones cracked and shifted as his body began to swell hideously. In seconds, the man had vanished, replaced by a towering, fur-covered monster. Chi-Yun watched from the shadows, his heart pounding against his ribs. But before the beast appeared, the hunt had already begun in silence. Moments earlier, two unsuspecting guards had wandered right into his trap, and like a ghost in the dark, Chi-Yun merged with the shadows. With a single flash of light, the two men were silenced forever. Inside the camp, a man known as Pointy Mouth felt a sudden chill. He whispered to the leader that the scouts hadn't returned from the dark. Zhang Chong listened, but the forest outside was unervingly quiet. That's when he realized they were no longer the hunters. He sent one more man out to check the southeast post, but that man vanished just as quickly as the others. Even worse, not a single sound echoed back from the trees. Without warning, the entire tribe rushed out to face the unknown. They found their comrades, but none of them would ever wake up. 7 of his best men had been taken down like helpless chickens. And get this, he was so enraged that he unleashed his forbidden power. His beastly instincts instantly locked onto a scent in the wind. It was the scent of fresh blood mixed with a stranger's aura. The monster growled 2 terrifying words: found. You. Just then, the beast charged with speed that defied logic. Chi-Yun didn't panic. He threw a knife at a nearby tree. Before he could be crushed, he vanished into thin air. He reappeared instantly, leaving the monster biting nothing but air. The wolf man was relentless and turned for a second strike. Meanwhile, the remaining minions tried to surround the elusive hunter. Chi-Yun danced between them, taking lives with every teleport. In his fury, the monster even began slaughtering his own men. Right after, Chi-Yun tried to end the fight with a direct thrust. But the beast's fur was as tough as tempered iron. All of a sudden, a massive claw grazed Chi-Yun's shoulder. Escaped by a hair, but the pain was nearly unbearable. And then, the monster finally figured out the secret of his movement. The beast began destroying every knife Chi-Yun had placed. One by one, his escape routes were being systematically erased. Without warning, he found himself backed into a corner. His stamina was failing, and his mental energy was nearly gone. Suddenly, he spotted a final, desperate chance for survival. He had left a hidden mark on a minion earlier that night. In that moment, he teleported right into the enemy's heart. He struck down 2 dying men with cold, surgical precision. And just like that, the system announced his sudden level up. He had unlocked a power that could tear through reality itself. The monster didn't care. It lunged for the killing blow. Chi-Yun didn't move. He simply raised his hand to the sky. The faint crack like breaking glass. The space split apart. The silver line passed through the beast as if it weren't there. The terrifying leader was instantly divided into 2 perfect halves. The hunt was over, and the predator had become the prey. The survivors fled into the woods, too terrified to even look back. Chi-Yun walked in the hut to find the captives waiting in fear. He told them they were free, his voice cold and indifferent. To them, he looked like a god descending from the heavens. Without another word, he turned and began the long walk home. He had grown stronger, but the island was only getting more dangerous. He didn't know was that his actions had just changed everything, and soon, even more powerful enemies would come looking for him. But for now, the Wolf of Tribe 14 was no more. Her eyes widened as the glowing interface revealed a terrifying and impossible number. Tribe 14, once a group of 20, had suddenly been cut in half. Only 13 survivors remained in that rival camp after just a few hours. And then, the realization hit her like a tidal wave of pure shock. This wasn't just a simple harassment. It was a total, systematic clearing. Chi-Yun was out there alone, moving with a terrifying and efficient speed. But suddenly, a deeper fear began to gnaw at her racing heart. How brutal must the battle have been for him to face them all? Without warning, her trembling fingers moved to check their own tribe's status. The number 30 glowed back at her, steady and completely unchanged. She let out a long, shaky breath that she didn't know she was holding. Even so, a steady number didn't mean he was safe from harm. Just then, heavy and dragging footsteps echoed from the dark hillside shadows. A familiar, exhausted voice whispered her name through the cold night air. Xiaojin bolted upright, her heart hammering against her ribs in panic. Her long blade clattered to the ground as she searched the darkness, and what she saw next left her breathless and frozen in place. Out of the moonlight emerged a figure covered in thick, dark stains. It was Qi Yun, stumbling forward with his last ounce of strength. A hideous, deep laceration marked his shoulder, looking truly shocking and painful. He looked like he had walked straight through the heart of a nightmare. In that moment, the man who always created miracles looked completely broken. Without a second thought, she rushed down the slope to catch him. She pulled his heavy, battered body onto her own back for support. "Me up," he wheezed, his voice carrying a heavy, rasping exhaustion. She walked with extreme care, fearing she might worsen his hidden wounds. He didn't want to go inside yet, preferring the cool sea breeze. So, she gently guided him to rest his head on her lap. He finally let go of his strength, collapsing into her warm embrace. "Solve," he whispered softly, before his eyes drifted shut in deep sleep. Xiaojin looked down at him, her vision blurring with hot, sudden tears. She realized she was finally crying for a man after all this time. But get this, she knew his sacrifice couldn't be wasted for even a second. She immediately gathered the others to plunder the rival tribe's remaining resources. The survival count for Tribe 14 had just plummeted to 13. Just moments before, the island chat was filled with cruel laughter. Members of Tribe 09 and 07 were busy mocking the women of Tribe 01, called them heroines, and made disgusting jokes about their defeat. One user even asked if they were too beaten to even walk anymore. They urged the beauties to surrender and seek protection from a strong tribe. But Xiaojin wasn't about to let their insults slide without a fight. She sent a single, chilling warning that appeared on every screen. Get this. She told them to shut up, or they be next. But the keyboard warriors only laughed harder at her desperate words. They truly believed she was hiding in a rock crevice, shivering in fear. One troll even shouted that dying struggles always sound the best. However, a sudden realization began to sweep through the other survivors. Why hadn't Tribe 14 said a single word since the war began? Usually, those arrogant men would be roaring with pride in the channel. But the silence was heavy, unnatural, and deeply unsettling for everyone. That's when a user named Dashi finally pointed out the impossible truth. Tribe 14's population had mysteriously dropped from 30 down to 13. Everyone immediately scrambled to check the survival numbers for themselves. There was a cold, glaring 13 next to Tribe 14's name. Meanwhile, Xiaojin's Tribe 01 still stood at a full 30 members. The realization hit the mockers like a physical blow to the chest. The weak Tribe 01 actually slaughtered their powerful enemies overnight. The trolls who were just clamoring for scraps now felt completely strangled. Panic quickly replaced the arrogance in their frantic, stuttering messages. Some desperately claimed it was a bug, refusing to face the reality. Others suggested the tribe had simply run into a herd of wild beasts. Before long, Dashi decided to go and see the aftermath for himself. The entire channel then fell into an agonizing, breathless wait for news. Every single second felt like a century as they stared at their screens. Finally, a simple system notification pinged. Image uploaded. With trembling fingers, every survivor clicked to view the horrific file. But what they saw exceeded even their darkest, most twisted expectations. Figures lay scattered across the clearing, resting in eternal, peaceful silence. Large patches of dark crimson liquid stained the earth beneath them. It was a scene of absolute devastation that defied all logic. The most soul-chilling sight was on the wall of the largest hut. Two massive numbers were painted in fresh, viscous red, 01. Mocking stopped instantly, replaced by a terrifying, dead silence. Wang Koei, the leader of Tribe 07, was the first to start groveling. He claimed it was all a misunderstanding and begged Xiaojin for mercy. Xiaojin watched the dramatic scene with a cold, piercing gaze. She demanded a massive tribute of resources to forget their insults. Their dignity was now forged in the victory over their enemies. Chi-Yin was rudely dragged out of a deep sleep by a stinging pain in his shoulder, and then he saw a flawless but expressionless face pressed almost against his own nose. Just then, Baiyu flatly announced that his vital signs and trauma status were finally stable. Suddenly, a heavy sense of guilt gripped him as he remembered their promised experiment. Without warning, Chi-Yin tried to sit up, but her hand gently pressed him back down. She explained that his recovery was incomplete and he needed to stay perfectly still. Right after that, Chi-Yin looked at her, desperately wanting to explain his delay. Before he could speak, she pulled out a crude cup made from a giant leaf. Instead of handing it over, she brought the cold water directly to his parched lips. The icy liquid flowed down his throat, clearing the fog from his exhausted mind. All of a sudden, she told him there was no need to apologize for last night, but her complete understanding only made the weight of his guilt feel even heavier. If it were anyone else, they would be angry, but Baiyu was different. In that moment, he asked her directly if there was anything he could do to help. What he saw next was Baiyu tilting her head, seriously considering his offer. Get this, she wanted to complete the unfinished experiment right then and there. Even worse, she suggested leading the entire procedure from above while he stayed down. Chi-Yun's brain completely shut down for a few seconds in pure shock. He realized it was broad daylight, and anyone could walk through that door. If the other girls saw them, his reliable image would be shattered forever. Just as alarm bells rang in his mind, her hand reached toward him. But suddenly, the door was kicked open by a cheering Lin Lo. She was so excited to see him awake that she turned to run and tell the others. As she vanished, the room fell back into a heavy, subtle silence. Before he could even breathe a sigh of relief, Baiyu leaned down and kissed him. Chi-Yun's brain went completely buzz, paralyzed by the sudden contact. She didn't seem to care at all that dozens of girls were about to swarm in. That's when she announced the first step was complete and prepared for the next. Wait. Chi-Yun hurriedly interrupted her, his voice cracking with desperation. He argued that the experimental data would be unreliable since his body hadn't recovered. To his surprise, Baiyu actually agreed with his proposal to postpone. He finally let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Just then, a noisy crowd of girls swarmed into the small room. Chu Qinxue was the first to reach him, her eyes red with worry. While dealing with their concern, Chi-Yin realized he was lying on something incredibly soft. Lin Lu admitted she had drawn a new, blue-quality item, a massive, comfortable bed. But suddenly, Chun Xiaoan leaned in with a very mischievous smile. She teased him that now he had plenty of room for group activities. Without warning, Xiao Jin's cold voice broke through the noise, ordering everyone out. Once they were alone, she reported that they finally had enough resources to upgrade. Chi-Yin thanked her sincerely, telling her she was vital to the tribe's stability. She seemed taken aback by the praise, before asking what level he had reached. When he calmly revealed he was level 6, Xiao Jin's jaw practically hit the floor. He raised his hand, and the entire world began to rewrite itself. Chi-Yin pushed open the door, feeling the afternoon sun on his face. His left shoulder felt a slight tug, but the wound was healing. Only a LV6 physique could survive a fatal swipe like that. Just then, Shu Qinxue rushed toward him with wide, worried eyes. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her expressive brown eyes. Chi-Yin smiled warmly and gently ruffled her chestnut hair buns. I'm fine, good as new, he whispered to the petite girl. She grinned back, patting his powerful back with newfound relief. Around them, 30 girls stood tall, clad in rugged animal skins. Their outfits were rough, but they perfectly outlined their youthful figures. Nearby, Xiao Jin watched him with a subtle ripple in her red eyes. The materials are ready, she said, her voice calm and observant. Ian looked at their crumbling hut one last time. He stepped into the open space, his voice ringing with authority. Today, we make our first home stronger and safer. Suddenly, a glowing blue system interface appeared before his amber eyes, confirming the upgrade to a sturdy wooden house now. In that moment, the wood piles began to float into the air. An invisible giant hand seemed to be rebuilding the entire structure. Thatch was replaced by heavy beams and thick, sturdy planks. The girls marveled as stone walls rose from the ground. Within minutes, a majestic wooden house stood atop the cliff. It even featured a functional stone fireplace and a tall chimney. The system chimed, announcing the successful Level 2 upgrade. Earth-shattering cheers erupted as the girls rushed inside their new home. "It's so spacious," they cried, exploring the bright, dry rooms. Finally, they had a place that felt like a real home. But the celebration was cut short by a panicked scream. Chun Xiaolin ran from the coast, her skin dripping with seawater. She froze in shock, staring at the brand-new wooden mansion. "There's a massive storm coming," she yelled, her voice cracking. Sky just turned as black as a pot. Right after she spoke, a shrill gale began to wail. Heavy raindrops slammed against the roof like a barrage of stones. Inside, the tribe was safe, but the world outside was dying. Chi-Yin checked the public channel and saw pure, unadulterated chaos. Other survivors were screaming as their huts collapsed in the mud. Despair permeated every message as the temperature began to plummet. Meanwhile, Chi-Yun's girls were roasting fish by the warm fire. He enjoyed a rare moment of peace amidst the apocalyptic storm. Ku-Yun watched Chi-Yun as he sat alone by the window. Her animal skin smock couldn't hide her elegant, mature figure. She sat beside him, her skin glowing in the warm firelight. "Thank you for everything, Student Chi," she whispered softly. He turned to look at the teacher, his gaze intense and focused. "How do you see me?" she asked, her heart craving something more. Without a word, Chi-Yin pulled her tightly into his arms. She gasped, her body losing balance as she fell against him. "If you don't push me away now," he warned, "I'm never stopping." The earth itself began to scream as a buried secret clawed its way out. The relentless rain lashed against the hillside, washing away the heavy soil. Suddenly, a face of breathtaking beauty was revealed to the storm. Her skin was deathly pale, and her lips were completely bloodless. Just then, an eyelash trembled against the freezing downpour. Her eyes snapped open, revealing a void of profound, bottomless emptiness. She lay there silently, letting the water cleanse her matted hair. With a labored push, she began to pull herself from the earth. Inch by inch, she rose like a ghost from a shallow grave. She stood upright, her bare feet sinking into the thick muck. Her tattered white clothing clung to an excessively graceful silhouette. Looking around, she saw nothing but a strange world of gray rain. She closed her eyes, sensing heat signatures moving in the distance. "Quite a few people this time," she whispered in a parched voice. Then, she commanded the storm to fall with even greater ferocity. Meanwhile, the island's chat channel was exploding with pure desperation. The digital rabbit, Bunny, appeared on the screen with a mocking grin. "Bunny is so sad to see you all suffering," it teased cruelly. Angry messages flooded the screen, cursing the digital avatar's existence. Bunny only laughed, its glowing red eyes flashing with delight. "I have a gift for you all," the rabbit announced suddenly. Supply crates were now scattered throughout the deadly rainstorm. It contained food, medicine, and items to make the survivors stronger. It was the ultimate bait, designed to make the hungry wolves fight. And despite the danger, the survivors knew they had to find them. Inside the cliffside cabin, a warm fire crackled in the hearth. Shu Qinshue lounged on the bed, sipping a cold soda lazily. Chun Xiaolin watched the roasting fish, enjoying the rare moment of peace. Xia Jin knew that strength was the only way to survive. If other tribes found those crates first, their safety would vanish. Everyone turned to Chi-Yun, waiting for the chieftain's final word. "I'll go out and investigate," he decided, grabbing his gear. Without hesitation, Xia Jin stood up to join him in the storm. "You're still recovering," she insisted, her eyes full of resolve. Shu Qinshue tried to follow, but Chi-Yin told her to stay. He needed his strongest warrior to guard their home while they were gone. As they opened the door, a blast of icy wind hit the cabin. The girls immediately shrieked, jokingly telling them to hurry up and leave. Chi-Yin felt like a total nuisance being kicked out into the cold. Once outside, he pulled out his ancient compass and whispered, "Seek fortune." But the needle didn't point to a crate. It pointed straight toward the woman. The storm was absolute, a torrential force ravaging the deserted island. And there, against an ancient tree, a mysterious woman leaned in silence. Deep within her violet eyes, a faint trace of confusion finally emerged. "What is going on?" she whispered, her voice sounding strangely hoarse. She tried to command her subjects, just like she always had. But her consciousness was like a stone sinking into a bottomless ocean. There was no response, no feedback, and no connection at all. Yet, she could clearly feel her subjects sleeping deep underground. This was not normal. and a sense of dread began to rise. Her body was too weak, her power barely a flickering ember now. Suddenly, she understood the truth. She had awakened far too early. This harsh weather had ripped her from her slumber prematurely. In this state, even a level 1 weakling could take her life. She needed a safe place to rest and recover her strength. Then, she felt 2 powerful auras rapidly approaching her location. Using the last of her power, she began manipulating the falling rain. The water distorted the light, blurring her silhouette into the shadows. It was the only concealment she could manage in her fragile state. Meanwhile, Chi-Yun and Xia-Jin followed the compass's steady guidance. The needle pointed directly at the ancient tree, yet nothing was there. Chi-Yun, there's nothing here, Xia-Jin said, scanning the area. Chi-Yun's brows knitted together as his heart filled with growing confusion. He had risked everything to come out here in this deadly storm. Was the compass malfunctioning, or was he misinterpreting it again? He recalled the time it pointed to zombies beneath his very feet. Let's look again, he muttered, his voice deep and full of resolve. Slowly, he raised his head toward the menacing, ancient tree trunk. At first, there was only the blurred curtain of freezing rain. Then, he noticed the light distorting in an unnatural way. Utilizing his space perception, he focused his gaze on the anomaly. Finally, he saw right through the clever layer of magical camouflage. A woman, a stunningly beautiful woman, was leaning against the tree. Damn it! Chi-Yun cursed silently, his heart racing with shock. He had braved the storm for a high-value target. Not this. He brought her back. What would the other girls think? The thought of their gossip made his scalp tingle with anxiety. Just then, the mysterious woman's eyes flickered with a trace of surprise. Her gaze landed on the ancient compass still pointing at her. Realizing she was caught, she stopped wasting power on the concealment. "Oh!" Xia-Jin shouted, her blade instantly aimed at the stranger. A berserker? The woman whispered, recognizing Xia-Jin's class immediately. Chi-Yun felt a chilling sense of indifference in the woman's eyes. "Put away your blade, Xia-Jin," Chi-Yun commanded his partner. He stepped forward alone, facing the mysterious beauty in the rain. Taking a deep breath, he decided to break the heavy silence. "Hello, beautiful," he said, his words cutting through the storm. Xia-Jin stared at him in disbelief, her eyes wide with shock. The mysterious woman's violet eyes widened at his incredible boldness. "You are quite interesting," she replied, her voice smooth and calm. Chi-Yun asked for treasures, but she only offered her white robe. He stepped closer, his hand touching her delicate, inhumanly soft skin. Suddenly, he leaned in and kissed her, shocking the powerful entity. "Disaster, Li," she whispered before vanishing into the falling rain. Chi-Yun felt like a helpless lamb trapped in a den of hungry wolves. But to understand how he got here, we have to look back. The torrential rain showed no signs of stopping as they trekked back. The freezing water pelted their faces with a painful, stinging force. Chi-Yun muttered about the miserable weather while wiping his eyes. He desperately hoped they would stumble upon one of those reward boxes. Otherwise, this grueling trip would be a total waste of energy. Meanwhile, his mind drifted toward the upcoming experiment with Bai Yu. He wondered if her icy expression would finally break during their session. Just then, his ears grew hot at the mere thought of it. But suddenly, Xia-Jin's voice cut through his messy train of thought. He snapped back to reality, meeting her sharp, inquisitive gaze. She narrowed her eyes, demanding to know what he was thinking. Panicking, he couldn't exactly tell her he was daydreaming about another girl. So, his face instantly switched to a serious and solemn expression. He claimed he was worried about the zombies awakening tomorrow. Get this, he even threw in a heavy, dramatic sigh. Xia-Jin watched him quietly as rainwater flowed down her hair. But instead of suspicion, a complex emotion surfaced in her red eyes. She was actually moved by his supposed dedication to the tribe. Softening her voice, she told him they would discuss it together later. Chi-Yun nodded, secretly breathing a massive sigh of relief. Without warning, as they rounded a muddy hillside, Xia-Jin froze. She lowered her voice, pointing toward a pile of wet rocks. There, half buried in the mud, was a gray-blue metal box. The infamous rabbit logo was faintly visible through the heavy downpour. Chi-Yun's eyes lit up, his fatigue vanishing in an instant. He carefully approached the box while Xia-Jin gripped her knife. The sharp click, He pried the latch open with his blade. Inside were two packages wrapped tightly in waterproof tarpaulin. The first item turned out to be a translucent, white bed curtain. It was designed to provide privacy without blocking out the light. Xiaojin arched an eyebrow, confused by such a random reward. But the second package contained something much more valuable. It was a blueprint for an automatic thermostatic heating bathtub. This high-tech tub even featured a drain connected to a spatial rift. Exchanged a look of pure astonishment at the strange find. Despite the oddity, it was definitely better than returning empty-handed. So, they continued their trek toward the warm light on the cliff. The moment they stepped inside, the girls rushed to the door. They were frantic with worry, surrounding the pair with loud concerns. Guyin checked them for wounds, finally breathing a sigh of relief. The room went silent as the girls imagined the upcoming experiment. Next, he pulled out the blueprint for the heating bathtub. Suddenly, a wave of pure joy erupted throughout the entire cabin. But then, a flushed Yishi raised a very awkward question. Then, Chen Xiaolin stared at him with eyes full of pure desire. Qi Yun froze as Chen Xiaolin offered to undress him herself. Just moments ago, he was looking at the blueprint for a high-tech bathtub. But in this survival game, every piece of wood and stone was precious. We should prioritize our defenses over luxury, he argued with obvious hesitation. That's when Chen Xiaolin stood up and made a surprising vow. She promised to gather materials before dawn, even in the freezing rain. Even Lin Lu chimed in, claiming a bath would improve their work efficiency. Suddenly, a dozen intense gazes were locked directly onto him. Qi Bao risks everything for us, so why can't he have this? Her coordinated pressure was far more effective than he ever expected. And so, with a heavy sigh, Qi Yun finally gave his consent. But in her excitement, Chen Xiaolin let her true thoughts slip out. Finally get to watch Qi Bao take a bath, she giggled. The entire room went silent as everyone stared at her in disbelief. Realizing her mistake, she immediately began whistling and looking at the ceiling. Qi Yun seized the moment to try and cancel the construction. Someone here has very impure motives, he shouted, pointing her out. However, the girls just blinked their large eyes and played dumb. What are you talking about? It must have been the wind, Lin Lu said. Qi Yun realized he was being completely gaslit by his own teammates. Without any other choice, he opened his system panel to proceed. A brilliant burst of light suddenly erupted in the corner of the room. In its place sat a sleek, white, automatic heating bathtub. It looked incredibly high-tech compared to their rugged survival shelter. The girls jumped for joy, celebrating their first taste of modern luxury. Chen Xiaolin immediately began pumping purified water into the hidden tank. As the steam rose, the atmosphere in the room turned heavy. Curiosity and excitement filled the air as they waited for him. The water is hot, so get in already, Lin Lu urged him. Qi Yun walked to the tub, feeling the weight of their stares. That's when Chen Xiaolin offered to help him remove his clothes. He turned to her in disbelief, his face flushing a bright red. While the others pretended to look away, they didn't miss a thing. But Chen Xiaolin didn't even try to hide her intense appreciation. Stop staring like that, Qi Yun yelled, hiding in the water. Finally leaned back, letting the warmth soothe his exhausted body. But when he opened his eyes, the athletic beauty was looming right over him. Qi Yun stood frozen as the animal skin hit the floor. What was meant to be a simple bath had just become a teasing treat. But to understand this chaos, we have to go back to that morning. He opened his eyes to find Chen Xiaolin staring right at him. She claimed she was just admiring a work of art with total confidence. And honestly, trying to teach this girl modesty was a lost cause. After finishing his own bath, Qi Yun quickly wrapped himself in a skin. Just then, the athletic Xia Jin stepped toward the water without a word. Unlike the others, her frame was tall, firm, and sculpted by training. She moved with a graceful indifference, focused only on the warmth. But as she submerged, her eyes drifted toward Qi Yun by the fire. Meanwhile, the storm outside continued to batter their small shelter. To distract himself, Qi Yun opened the island's global chat channel. The messages were a mess of survivors complaining about their weird loot. From stockings to pig care books, the rabbit was clearly trolling. What he didn't realize was that some were hiding much better items. Suddenly, the Kambayu sat down right beside him. She whispered a single question. Are you ready for tonight's experiment? Looking at her fair skin and soft features, his heart began to race. He nodded, knowing he couldn't back out now even if he wanted to. After all, Bai Yu had been the first to stand by him when it mattered. As the hours ticked by, the other girls took their turns in the tub. That's when Chun Xiaolin decided to stir up some real trouble. She asked Qi Yun to bring her a clean skin while she was bathing. But as he approached, she dropped her cover and let the water splash. The firelight danced off her skin, highlighting every curve. Qi Yun was completely stunned, unable to look away from the beauty. However, after a few seconds, the bold girl finally lost her nerve. Her face turned bright red as she hid her head in embarrassment. While the others laughed, one girl remained silently in the shadows. Yishi watched them, her fingernails digging deep into her own palms. The bitterness of her own cowardice was starting to become unbearable. Without warning, the sun vanished and the true night finally arrived. Bai Yu pulled the curtains shut, leaving only silhouettes in the moonlight. She leaned in close, noting that Qi Yun's heart rate was skyrocketing. The warmth of her breath against his skin made it impossible to stay calm. Before he could speak, she leaned in to claim her dopamine intake. She whispered that he was her only unique subject forever. And then, the real experiment began in the silence of the night. Qi Yun woke up to the most shocking sight of his life. A tangle of limbs and soft breathing filled the small wooden house. But wait, whose long leg was currently pinned across his waist? Definitely wasn't Bai Yu, who was curled up like a cat beside him. He turned his head only to find Shu Qinshu sprawling like an octopus. Even the Lin twins had somehow snuck into the pile during the night. Qi Yun couldn't help but smile at the chaotic, beautiful mess. But the peace was shattered by a cold, mechanical voice in his mind. System notification. The clan leader's blessing has been triggered. And just like that, a legendary reward appeared before his eyes. He had just obtained the defense boundary stone. This one item could turn a fragile shack into an unbreakable fortress. But the system wasn't done handing out miracles just yet. Because of last night's experiment, Bai Yu was now eligible for a class change. Two paths lay before her: the Law Weaver or the Lord of Abundance. Qi Yun's heart raced as he realized the sheer power of these options. He gently nudged Bai Yu awake to share the incredible news. She opened her eyes, her cheeks still flushed from the previous night, and with her usual analytical calm, she began reporting her experimental data. She spoke of dopamine levels and lost bodily control with a straight face. Qi Yun found her clinical honesty both absurd and incredibly cute. When presented with the choices, she didn't hesitate for a single second. To choose Law Weaver, she declared, her eyes shining with interest. A blinding burst of light instantly merged into her slender body. She now possessed the terrifying power to ignore the laws of physics. But there was no time to celebrate with the zombie crisis looming. The entire group headed out to the forest for a final combat test. There, they found Xia Jin already training with her blood color blade. She moved like a blur, her weapon leaving afterimages in the air. Qi Yun watched as the other girls prepared to show their progress. The basic warriors stepped forward, gripping their long swords with trembling hands. With a unified shout, they unleashed a horizontal slash on the trees. Wood chips exploded as their blades buried themselves deep into the trunks. It was impressive, but Xia Jin was about to show them true power. As a berserker, she didn't even need to use a special skill. With one casual swing, a massive tree was sliced clean in half. Girls gasped in awe at the sheer suppression of a rare class. Then, it was Shu Qinshu's turn to demonstrate her destroyer abilities. She threw a simple punch, lacking any refined technique or grace. Boom! The tree trunk snapped like a toothpick on her fist. But the most shocking display came from Bai Yu and a giant rock. She lifted it with one hand, ready to unleash a power that defied logic. Zombies are sleeping right beneath your feet, waiting to tear you apart. The chat exploded as Qi Yun dropped the ultimate truth bomb. But before the chaos, his team was preparing for the slaughter. High on a cliffside, the sound of clashing metal never stopped. Xia Jin's red eyes scanned the girls like a hawk hunting prey. And then she barked, her voice sharper than any blade. The girls pushed harder, their muscles screaming in the humid heat. They knew survival wasn't a gift. It was earned in blood. Meanwhile, Qi Yun stood at the edge, staring into the abyss. Just then, Bai Yu adjusted her glasses, calculating their survival odds. Our advantage here is over 300%, she noted coldly. This natural fortress was the only reason they were still alive. Qi Yun wasn't planning on just hiding like a coward. He pointed down the slope, outlining a brutal three-tier defense. First, a hunting zone where they would strike from the shadows. Take the initiative, he declared, his amber eyes burning bright. Right after, Xiajin grinned, a bloodthirsty excitement lighting her face. The thought of picking them off one by one was intoxicating. And then came the wooden barricade, a wall of staggered trees. He would funnel the entire horde into a single, deadly choke point. Numbers don't matter when the enemy can only attack one by one. It was a pragmatic plan designed for a total, calculated massacre. And if that failed, the final defense involved crushing rolling boulders. They weren't just surviving, Qian told them, his voice booming. We are turning these monsters into fuel for our growth. Without warning, Chun Xiaolin clenched her fists, her teeth bared. Even the shy, Shu Qianxue found the courage to shout for war. But Qian worried if they could build it all in time. That's where Baiju's mass control skill changed the entire game. With gravity on their side, the impossible became a reality. The girls threw themselves into construction, fueled by pure desperation. Meanwhile, back in the chat, Tribe 03 was desperately begging for allies. Qi Yin knew better than to trust a group of strangers. He watched the petty arguments scroll by with cold indifference. That's when he sent the warning that stopped everyone's hearts. The zombies are underground, he typed, and the world went silent. Moments later, terrified reports confirmed his nightmare was real. While the world panicked, a greater threat stirred in the dark. Deep in a hidden cave, Li felt her subjects waking up. Her purple eyes snapped open, sensing ancient powers shifting nearby. She looked toward the cliff, remembering the boy who defied her. "Will you be dust?" she whispered, or was something much more interesting.